Okay guys, let's look at the library a bit more. Let's go a little bit more in depth again. Creating and saving to the library instruments with separate outputs so that they load from the library with all the separate outs set up. Now we're really talking about third-party drum instruments here. Okay, all third-party drum kit type instruments can have separate outs, right? So really what you want to do is be able to save your created separate out kits once they're tweaked to the library and load them anytime. Okay, let's look at that. So I'm going to start by creating a new software instrument track, but I'm going to not have it populated by the default patch. It's just going to be an empty software instrument track. There it is. There's its channel in the inspector column. And in the instrument slot itself, I'm going to load my third-party drum instrument, and I'm going to use Modo Drum for this in multi-output mode. Right. Wait for it to load. Come on. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to go with this default Yamaha Studio kit, and I'm going to bring in the additional hanging tom. Okay, let's look at what that gives us now. Okay, that gives us a kit with kick drum, snare, 3 hanging toms, 2 floor toms, 2 crashes, a splash, and the ride and the hi-hats. But I might bring in, what's this symbol here? I might bring in an additional symbol if I want. A smaller crash, and you know what, I'll bring in the China as well. Okay, so there's my kit now, right, with some extra symbols, but the main thing is kick, snare, 3 hanging toms, 2 floor toms, the hats, and then the cymbals. Okay, now this is Modo Drum. In your particular drum software, there's going to be a way to assign individual drums, cymbals, etc., overheads, room mics, etc., to separate DAW outputs. In Modo Drum, you do it in the mixer. So you would do this first in your drum software. So I'm going to start, the master out is the main output 1, 2 of Modo Drum. And by default, everything goes to it, including the overheads and the room mics, everything, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that my main output 1, 2, my master output, is the overheads and all the cymbals, and then give the individual drums their separate outs, right? As it would be in a real studio situation. You'd have close mics on the kick, snare, the toms. Your overheads would be pointing down at the cymbals. They'd also pick up the rest of the kit, right? So the kick drum, let's send it to DAW output 3, 4, the next pair of outs. The snare, DAW output 5, 6. The hi-hat, which I want to be next, output 7, 8. Then my toms, tom 1, DAW output 9, 10. Hanging tom number 2, DAW output 11, 12. Hanging tom number 3, DAW output 13, 14. Floor tom 1, DAW output 15, 16. Floor tom 2, DAW output 17, 18. All my cymbals, the ride, the China, the crash, the other crash, the splash, and the 18-inch crash, plus all these percussion extra instruments, they're all going to the master out. I now go to my overhead room. The overhead's going to the master out, but the room I'm going to assign to the final stereo out 1920. That's my final stereo out of what I'm setting up, is what I mean. Okay. Now, oops. Now, obviously, okay, that's that. The room mic channel is assigned to the output 1920 on the DAW. Now, obviously, any tweaking of the kit you would do, however your drum software works in terms of editing it. You might want to use internal effects and internal EQ on the channels of the internal mixer of your third-party drums, And there'll be other things you can edit in the actual drums themselves, the tuning, dampening, all those kind of things. So you do all that, right? Okay. But I'm not saving this as a patch to the internal library of the actual instrument. All I've done is set up the separate outs for the drums, right? Okay. Okay, that's done. Now in Logic, let's go to the mixer now. And before we do that, you might notice I brought the color bars in on the tracks. To do that, you just bring up the shortcut menu for the tracks, track header components, track color bars, and now with that track selected, I'm going to Alt-C, bring up the color palette, and make my Modo drum track orange, and I'm going to call it Modo drum. Right? Okay. Now if we look in the mixer, there's the track selected. Here's its channel in the mixer. Now with separate out drums and other separate out instruments in Logic, what happens is you create the instrument track, put the instrument on it, and you have to then create the separate out channels for that instrument in the mixer here. There's a plus and minus button at the bottom of the channel with the instrument on it to add or take away separate outs. So I created 9 separate outs. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 separate outs. That's my main output with the instrument on, master out 1, 2, which is carrying the overheads and all the cymbals. There's output 3, 4 with the kick, output 5, 6 with the snare, output 7, 8 with the hi-hats, and then these are the 3 hanging toms, that's the 2 floor toms, and there's my room mic channel. Okay, let's drag this drummer pattern down onto this track and it will be converted to MIDI. We'll drag a copy down, gets converted to MIDI there. Mute everything else, and here we go. Yeah, all playing fine. Just to test the toms, I'll go back to this drummer pattern, switch it to playing a tom riff, quite a busy tom riff. Mute all the other drums. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is drag this tom pattern down here. It'll get converted to MIDI, and then make a new instrument track. Right, drag that tom pattern down, select them both and blend them together, and I'll blend the tom pattern with the other pattern, right, like that, and then I'll get rid of that track. Okay, so now this has got toms and hi-hats and everything in it. Let's have a listen. Right, and look in the mixer. Yeah, we can see our tom channels playing now. Kick, snare, hats, toms, etc. Right, it's all the separate outs are working. Okay. So the thing is this, we've set up our third-party drum instrument, we've created the separate out channels for it in Logic. You have to do that with that plus. We've created all that, it's all working. So there's the main track for Modo drum selected. The channel is here. The blue triangle is pointing to the channel strip setting slot at the top. I do save in the library. I call it Modo drum outs. Save. Done. It's in my user patches now. Okay, let me move this pattern out of the way so we can use it again. Let's get rid of that now. Get rid of it. Select the track. Gone. It's now gone. Disappeared. Let's make the instrument track again. Instrument track. User patches. The blue triangle's pointing to the channel strip setting slot at the top of the channel for the empty instrument track. And I'll load Modo drum outs. Boom. And you see, it's only loaded the main track and channel not any of the separate out channels. They're not there. You'd have to create them all again from scratch. If we open the actual instrument, the instrument is loaded fine. Right? The instrument's loaded fine. It's loaded up as I configured it, with the 3 hanging toms and the additional cymbals, and a mixer is loaded with the drums assigned to the correct separate outs and everything, including the room mics going to the output 19 separate outs 19 20, right? So it's remembered the patch for the instrument, including the mixer settings and everything. That's all been saved as part of that library save, but it hasn't saved and reloaded the separate outs. I'd have to create them all again from scratch. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and then if I titled them, I'd have to retitle them. I'd have to put all the processors and effects back on their outputs, etc., etc. Right? Okay. So if you want to save a third-party drum instrument with all the separate outs set up and everything, you've got to turn it into a track stack, the same as the producer patch drummer kits, where you open it out, the main track, and inside are all the separate outs of the drums, including the main channel with the instrument itself on it. Right? So we're going to do that. There's my Modo drum track again. Here it is in the mixer. I've just created those separate outs all over again. We know if we open the Modo drum instrument itself, the patch has been loaded for the drums fine. All the separate outs are correct in the mixer, and the drum kit itself has got all the drums in I wanted, the 3 toms and the extra cymbals, etc. Right, so that's all done. Okay. So what we do now is, there's all our separate outs. We do this. We are going to create a track for all those separate outs. So that is the main channel for the actual instrument track with the instrument on it. So that already has a track. But these separate outs, we use Shift and select them all. And then with them all selected, right click on any of them on the grey background, create a track for them all. Boom. Now all those separate outs have got tracks. There's the main track with the instrument on. And then there's all the separate outs. Each separate out now has a track. Right? That's the whole lot. Okay, so now some prep work before we do the save. Let's do a bit of prep work. We're going to title these. So that's the kick. That's a snare. I'm titling them here in the mixer, but I could title them here. You know, this is the channel, that's its track, so if I title them here it's the same. This is my hats. This is Tom 1. This is Tom 2. This is Tom 3. This is floor Tom 1. This is floor Tom 2, floor with 2 O's, please, floor Tom 2, and finally that's my room mics. Right. The main track in its channel here is my overheads and all the cymbals. So I can actually title that overheads, even though that is the track in its channel with the drum instrument on. Right, that's done. Let's just lower this down a little bit so we can see all those tracks. Right. Now what we do is this. In the mixer, we create, and I'm going to, we create in the mixer options, a new auxiliary channel strip, which can be for effects returns, or it can behave as a group bus depending how we set that auxiliary channel strip up. Create new auxiliary channel strip. Boom. It appears right down at the very end of the mixer, just before the final stereo out. There it is. Now I'm going to put its input to no input so it doesn't pick my mic up. I'm going to title this Modo Drums. All right. And with it selected in the mixer, I'm going to make it the same colour as all the Modo drum outputs. So with that channel selected, Alt-C to bring up the colour box and make it orange as well. Now I'm going to create a track for it, and when I do that, its track will appear at the end after whichever is the selected track here. So I'm going to select the final track, then in the mixer, go to that created auxiliary, right click and create a track for it. There it is at the bottom, and it moves up the mixer to live in the mixer in the order that the tracks are here. So it's at the end after the room mics. Right. Now this is the next bit we do. This auxiliary at the moment it's not doing anything. It's got no input. We can set it up to receive from an auxiliary send and make it a send return with a reverb or whatever on it, or we can make it a bus track. A bus channel rather, so it's receiving on a bus. So what I'm going to do is set its input to the first free bus, which for me is bus 22. It's the first bus with nothing written after it. So this auxiliary channel is now receiving on bus 22. Now I get all of the Modo channels, all of them. The first one with the instrument on and all of the separate out channels, they're all currently routed to the final stereo out, and I'm going to route them all to this group bus, which is receiving on bus 22. Output bus 22, Modo drums. So now all of those separate outs, including the first pair of outs with the instrument on, are all routed to this group bus. Let's drag a pattern down onto that instrument. Okay, this is a pattern with some toms and everything playing. So all of Modo drum's going to play, but all of these outputs are going to be routed to that auxiliary group bus. Yeah? You can see all the individual channels of the drums triggering, but you don't hear them now because I've got the group bus turned down. All of these channels, including the first channel with the instrument on, my overheads, which is all my overhead and my cymbals, etc., everything's routed to this group bus. And we have a track for that group bus. Now what I'm going to do is drag that track up to the top, above the main Modo track in its channel. Right, there it is there. And now what I do is I get the Modo main track with the instrument on and all the tracks for the outputs, select the whole lot with shift, and then bring up the shortcut menu with all of those highlighted and create track stack. Logic knows and remembers that every one of these Modo tracks and their channels are routed to that group bus track in its channel. So when we make these into a track stack, Logic will route them all to that group bus track and its channel and put them inside that group bus track and its channel. Create track stack. A summing stack, boom. And all those separate outs of Modo, including the main out with the instrument on, get put inside the track and channel which is the group bus. And that can be compacted and expanded like that. And if you put the pattern on the actual group bus channel and track, it still triggers the drums. Exactly the same as a producer patch kit in Logic Pro X. That's what we've done. Okay, now we can save that, but before we do a little bit of tidying, let's do a little bit of tidying. I'm going to just change the icons on these tracks and their channels in the mixer. So that's the main group bus track. So on this I'm going to put an EQ, so there's an EQ there ready to go. I'll put a compressor, because remember the whole kit's going through this. The whole kit is going through this final group bus track in its channel. Right. Now the icons, let's change all the icons. And you do that by right clicking on the actual icon. Now this group bus track and its channel originally was created in the mixer as an auxiliary channel, so it has the default auxiliary icon, which is a control knob. Now to change an icon, we just right click on those icons, or if like me the toolbox is assigned to you right click, I'm just control clicking on those icons. So let's start with the main group bus and change that to a kit icon. Then the overheads, drums, there isn't an overhead icon, so I'll just make that a kit icon. Kick, drum, kick drum, snare, let's make that a snare drum. Hats, make that hats, tom 1. Actually I can do all three hanging toms at once with a little tom, and then the 2 floor toms, do those together. Floor tom, and then finally the room. I'll go with that pair of mics like that. Right, there you go. So I've given them little icons, and those icons appear in the mixer as well. Right, everything's coloured right except for the group bus track. When it got turned into a track stack, it got changed to green. So click on it in the mixer here, Alt C, change it to be orange. Boom, there you go. That changes its colour on the track as well. Right, all done. So now all of our separate outs are inside a track stack routed to this group bus and its track. The whole kit, all the outputs of the kit are working independently, but they're all routed to this group bus. So they're all bussed here, right? The whole kit arrives at this final stereo channel, which can have effects on it like EQ and compression, etc., so to compress the entire kit. And of course the separate outs, you can put whatever you want on those separate outs, compressors, EQs, whatever, balance them how you want, right? But that's all done. Now what we do, just compact that stack. There's the track, there's its main channel, this is the group bus track, inside lives Modo Drum and all of its outs, right? There's its track, there's the channel, the blue triangles pointing to the channel strip, setting slot at the top, save, and I'll save this as Modo Drum outs, save. That's Modo Drums outs, right? Okay, let's get rid of it, move that pattern out of the way. Let's get rid of it, boom, it's gone. There's no more track. No more channels. New instrument track, software instrument. Track selected, channel strip setting slot has the blue triangle pointing to it. User patches, Modo Drums out. The track stack I just created, boom. Oh yeah, baby. Separate outs, loaded from the get-go. With all the titles of the tracks, all the icons, everything. Every track in its channel is there. Let's put the pattern on there to test it. And the pattern can live on the group bus track, just like with a regular producer patch kit in Logic. It doesn't have to live on the actual instrument track inside the main channel with the instrument on. Here we go. Yeah. Done and dusted. And that's how you do that. Yeah. Lovely jubbly. Okay. Now obviously what I can do now is I can go into Modo Drum, create different kits and save each one as a separate out kit, because now I've got it set up with all the separate outs and the track stack and everything. All I do is go to the first track inside the stack which has the instrument on, open the instrument, and now I can change my kit, change my drums, and then just resave with a different title, with the name of the actual kit in the title, and therefore I can build up a library of my favourite kits, all tweaked, edited, everything set up, whatever EQs and compression etc I want on the outputs, everything set as I want, and save them, and they're there to load any time into any projects that I want. Yeah, but that's how you do that with the library. And this is obviously a lot to do with track stacks. Right? Track stacks are a really big part of Logic, as I keep saying, which is why when Logic Pro X first came out, it was the first main tutorial I did on Logic Pro X, because it's a really big part of Logic Pro X. All the producer patch kits, all the drum machine designer drummer kits, etc., and other instruments that you load, and even channel strip presets for things like vocals that you load, are track stacks. It's a very big part of Logic. So if you want to learn all about track stacks, I've done a full college quality tutorial which is on our channel. If you search our channel for Logic Pro X, you'll find hundreds of college quality tutorials. I've taught this subject going back years in schools, colleges, adult and youth education establishments, etc. I did a 2-year specialist teacher training course as well, full-time, 2 years. Much more than you do to teach in a school, drilling into the psychology of learning, how people learn and everything like that. So these are good quality tutorials. So if you search our channel for Logic Pro X, you'll find hundreds of tutorials. I've done major tutorials on all the key parts of Logic. So I've done track stacks, smart controls, audio tracks and audio recording, drummer tracks and drum kit designer, electronic drummer tracks and drum machine designer, including how to build your own custom drum patches, including analog drums, purely analog drums. I've done a full tutorial on Ultra Beat, which is a really big part of Logic. It's extremely underrated. It's a very, very powerful part of Logic. And I've also done quite a few tutorials showing you how to record a song from start to finish all the way through. And then there's loads and loads and loads of smaller tutorials, tips, tricks, things like that. Right? So, you know, search our channel for Logic Pro X. There's an absolute ton of content. And I've got tens of thousands of comments and emails from people saying that they're the best Logic tutorials out there on the internet. So check it all out on our channel and subscribe and help us to provide more content. But look, this, you know, that's how to build separate out instruments. Save them to the library, which will load every time with all those separate outs ready to go, right? And it as I said, it incorporates this whole track stack technology. Okay, I hope that's useful. I'll see you for the next one.